Aloha mai kako. Good morning. This is the January 28th, 2021 Land Use Commission meeting. And it's being held using interactive conference technology, linking video conference participants and other interested individuals of the public via the Zoom internet conferencing program to comply with state and county official operational directives during the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public are viewing the meeting via the Zoom webinar platform. For all meeting participants, I'd like to encourage you to remember to speak slowly, clearly, and directly into your microphone. Before speaking, it helps if you state your name and identify yourself for the record. And also, please be aware that all meeting participants are being recorded on the digital record of this Zoom meeting. Your continued participation is your consent to be part of the public record for this event. If you do not wish to be part of the public record, you should exit the meeting now. This Zoom technology allows the parties and each participating commissioner individual remote access to the meeting proceedings via our own personal digital devices. So also please note, due to matters entirely outside of our control, occasionally disruptions to connectivity may occur for one or more members of the meeting at any given time. If such disruptions occur, please let us know and be patient as we try to restore the audiovisual signals to effectively conduct business during the pandemic. For members of the public who are in the attendee section of the Zoom meeting, you can use *9 to raise your hand and *9 to lower your hand. And you can also use *6 to indicate to the meeting host that you wish to be unmuted. My name is Jonathan Lee K.K. Scheuer, and I have the pleasure of currently serving as the Land Use Commission Chair. Along with me, Commissioners Don Chang, Gary Okuda, Arnold Wong, our LUC Executive Director Officer Daniel Oradenker, our Chief Planner Scott Derrickson, our Chief Clerk Riley Hakoda, our LUC Deputy Attorney General for the day, Julie Chena, and our court reporter, Jean McManus, are all on the island of Oahu. Commissioner Edmund Axon is supposed to join us in a couple of minutes, who is also on Oahu. Commissioner Nancy Cabral is on Hawaii Island. Commissioner Ohigashi is on Maui, and Commissioner Dan Giovanni is on Kauai. We currently have 8 seated commissioners of a possible 9. Mr. Hakoda or Mr. Derrickson, has there been any written testimony submitted on our first order of business, the adoption of the December 30th and January 6th, 2021 minutes?
Mr. Chair, this is Riley Hakoda. No public witnesses or comments on the minutes.
Okay. I'm going to acknowledge the presence of Commissioner Axon now with us as well. Is there any member of the public who is in the attendee? There's 4 folks in the attendee room who wishes to testify on this matter. If so, use the raise your hand function, or if you're connecting by phone, *9. Is there anybody who wishes to testify on adoption of the minutes? If not, I'll take the motions in order. First, December 30th. Is there any comments or a motion on adoption of the December 30th minutes? Commissioner Cabral, moving to adopt?
Yes, I move to adopt. I've read them very recently and they bring back fond memories.
Commissioner Ohigashi?
I'll second, but I'm a guest.
What are you aghast at, Commissioner Ohigashi?
Well, it was just used prevalently in the December 30th
Oh, okay.
minutes.
Is there any further comment on the December 30th minutes? If not, show by voice and a raise of hands, all in favor who say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The minutes are adopted for December 30th. Is there any comment or question about the January 6th, 2021 minutes? If not, may I have a motion to adopt? Commissioner Cabral?
I'll move to adopt.
by Commissioner Ohigashi. Are you again
Second.
aghast? Or only aghast for December 30th?
Only a gas for December 30th.
Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye and raise your hand for adoption.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the commissioners present. Our next agenda item is our tentative meeting schedule. Mr. Ordenker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On February 10th, we will be meeting once again virtually on the U of N Bencor matter with regard to being accepting authority for their environmental impact statement and to begin discussions of how the important agricultural land designation by the city and county of Honolulu will be handled. On Thursday, the 11th, we will have a meeting specifically dedicated to a discussion of how the important agricultural land filing by the city and county of Honolulu will be handled. On February 24th, we will be meeting to discuss the Barry Trust motion matter and begin work on the city and county's IAL submittal, as well as the 25th of February. On March 10th, we will be meeting regarding Hokua Place, and the 11th is also set aside for continuation of that matter. On March 24th, we will be adopting any order resulting from the Barry Trust matter. We will also be discussing important agricultural land matters, as well as on March 25th. In April, we have the Windward Hotel matter to take up. The date for that is probably the 15th instead of the 1st, but I have to check with the chief clerk with regard to scheduling on that. April 14th, we will be taking up a declaratory ruling request on the county of Maui. That has not been filed yet, but we expect it will be filed in a timely manner. On April 28th, we will take up the Kamalani motion to extend time. On May 12th, we will take up the AES West Oahu solar matter, and on the 13th, the Pohakea matter on Maui. May 26th is also set aside for the Pohakea matter. And that takes us through till June, which is as far as our confirmed calendar goes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ordenker. Commissioners, are there any questions for Dan? Seeing none, our next agenda item is legislative matters impacting the Land Use Commission and formation of a legislative committee. Before we take up this matter, I'm going to advise the commission that we have been advised differently than previous advice from our Deputy Attorney General that it's not advisable to form a separate committee. So we're only going to discuss legislative updates on this matter. Was there any written testimony submitted on this item, Mr. Derrickson or Mr. Hakoda?
Chair, this is Riley. There was nothing received by the office. No emails as well.
Is there anybody who's attending the meeting who wishes to testify on this matter? If so, use the raise your hand function. Seeing none, Mr. Ordenker, can you please advise the commission on what to expect during the next legislative session so that we may have a discussion?
We, as every year, we do every year, we have put together a list of bills that somehow impact or concern the Land Use Commission. And it's an interesting year in that it's heavily budget focused, and there's also attempts to formalize the virtual meeting capabilities of various boards and commissions. after the expiration of the governor's executive order, which has been what has allowed us to do these virtual meetings in the manner that we have. I'm not going to go through each one of those bills individually. There are as many as 8 bills submitted that would allow for virtual meetings. There's one from the administration, or 2 from the administration, of course. But many of them are duplicative. We're not sure which ones are going to end up going to hearing. There are a couple of the bills that we have problems with that we will be testifying on. One of them would require, or one set of bills would require that there be a public location available for participants. This would be extremely problematic for a couple of reasons. Number one is that there aren't many state facilities available that would allow for that kind of participation. I think this is one of the few that would. And I'm not sure that the legislature is aware of that. It would become extremely problematic to try and create Zoom meeting places on the neighbor islands. It would probably require travel on the part of staff to make sure everything is set up. Under such circumstances, there is also a concern that those individual meeting rooms where a group of people may come to testify could result in a loss of control on the part of the commissioners. I mean, if 100 people show up at a meeting room, at one meeting room, it would be difficult to control. Anyway, our testimony will be to attempt to resolve that issue. There also are a couple of the bills which would require that the commissioner's location, each individual commissioner's location and council's location and the agency's location be published as part of the notice. Now, this, as you may imagine, could be quite problematic. I'm sure Nancy wouldn't like to host 100 people in her office over her shoulder. So, for instance, so we will also be testifying with regard to those bills to attempt to get those provisions removed. There are also a number of bills that I won't be talking about that adjust what is or is not allowed in the agricultural district and further defines things like, you know, what is an agricultural activity, or increases the requirements or burden of proof on an agricultural lot homeowner with regard to whether or not a structure or a home or a residence is built in conjunction with agricultural activity. Those bills we usually stay out of because we feel we're the implementer of legislative policy and not the creator of legislative policy when it comes to uses within the agricultural district. That being said, I can run through a number of bills that are also impacting us. There is one bill that I should mention right up front, and that is House Bill 1149. The chair and staff have been in discussion with leadership in the House in particular with regard to the House of Representatives' feelings that the government needs to be streamlined and consolidated in general. This has resulted in a number of bills, all coming from the subject matter committee chairs, that seek to consolidate various departments, programs, whatever, into similar areas. The HB 1149 reorganizes and integrates the Land Use Commission within a modified and renamed Office of Planning. The name would be changed to Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. It also reclassifies some of the programs within the Office of Planning, the newly created Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. There was an attempt made, and we have been involved with advising Representative Tarnas with regard to how that could happen. Our focus has been on maintaining the integrity of the Land Use Commission as an independent entity within OP. HB 1149 would integrate OP into the Office of Planning and elevate the Office of Planning's Office of Planning's director to a cabinet level position. The theory being that by doing that, the Office of Planning director and the commission, meaning all you commissioners, would be at the same level from an organizational standpoint, because your commissioners are obviously appointed by the governor as well as the director of the Office of Planning. It would also attach the Land Use Commission to the Office of Planning rather than the Department of Business and Economic Development for administrative purposes. I have to say that we spent a lot of time talking with OP about this bill, Mary Alice and myself and a couple of other staff members. And we think that the biggest problem facing the bill is an attempt to figure out how we would operate, or the problem is associated to figure out how we would operate once the merger occurs. Office of Planning right now is a participant in all of our hearings. We would need Office of Planning or to somehow continue to participate. That would mean internally, we would have to create walls between the planners, similar to the walls that are put in law firms sometimes with regard to cases in front of us. It's problematic. I think that my personal opinion is that the legislators are not going to be overly concerned about that. They're going to be looking at the cost savings and the streamlining and then tell us to go figure it out. In discussions with the Office of Planning, Mary Alice, we recognize that issue. There's an attempt to codify that requirement so that if we run into problems, then we can handle it under the umbrella of the legislative authorization. I believe that this bill is going to at least move its way through the House because both Representative Tarnas, who drafted it, and Chair Luke have been involved in pushing for it. Our Representative Luke, Chair Luke, took the initiative and actually had discussions with our chair, if you don't mind me relating that, Chair, with regard to this. So I think there's some actual traction on this bill.
Get to discussion, I'll be more than happy to share with the commissioners how I was contacted by Chair Luke and
Complimented by Luke, by the way. There is another component to that bill that was originally being discussed that is currently in flux. And that is the bringing in the Office of Environmental Quality Control into the Office of Planning and the Land Use Commission. That is done through House Bill 1318. Representative Lowen introduced that bill. She's chair of the Environmental Committee. We didn't have much input into that. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. So we will be watching that closely to see how it is handled by the legislature, in particular by House Finance. Okay. Moving on, unless there are any questions on that right now. Chair Schreier, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I rearranged my dual displays and I was moving the cursor the wrong way. I want to sort of summarize where we're at so that we can have a useful discussion. I'm going to say what I think the four sort of broad categories of bills are that we're tracking, and maybe we can talk about the sets one by one. One is this idea of reorganization, some reorganization of state agencies that would include the LUC. The second is the ongoing issue of over county versus state jurisdiction on rezonings. The third is activities in the ag district. And the fourth is on how we conduct our meetings remotely. Is there another category of bills that we're concerned about?
I think that covers most of it. There are a few outliers, but that's basically it. The next category that I was going to go into was the bills with regard to jurisdiction over district boundary amendments.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you, but why don't you finish your summary and then we can talk about in turn those four categories of bills and the
There are a
commission's
couple
questions.
bills that have been introduced both on the House and the Senate side that increase the amount of land that the county has jurisdiction over in granting district boundary amendments. House Bill 260 is one of them. There are a couple of others. The House Bill 260 and its companion bill on the Senate side both seek to raise the county's jurisdiction from 15 acres to 100 acres to grant district boundary amendments where 50% of the housing units are set aside for persons and families with incomes below 140% of median. The justification for this bill seems to be that there would be more control and more equitable responsibilities for infrastructure, cost responsibilities for infrastructure and small and medium projects. This justification is severely flawed. And it also, we have some serious concerns about whether or not this is good planning. I mean, there are a lot of competing uses out there right now for agricultural land, food sustainability, energy. There's climate change issues, there's water issues. Allowing the counties to rezone up to 100 acres in a piecemeal fashion could result in severe impacts on those other initiatives. So we will be testifying in opposition to those. There is also a bill that raises the county's jurisdiction from 15 acres to 25 acres in the case where affordable housing is going to be built. 60% affordable housing is going to be built. That is actually interesting because the language is almost word for word taken out of the larger bill that was submitted last year. There was an attempt to rectify or to stimulate the construction of affordable housing that was many pages long and impacted various statutes at various levels and created funding mechanisms and all the rest. And that bill was actually hard fought and negotiated between all of the parties. And there were trade-offs and there were balances. And that bill, the Land Use Commission's position was that, okay, if you're going to do that, then you kind of need to give us our enforcement powers, which we've been trying to get for some time. So the trade-off was there. This bill just lifts the 25-acre language out of that bill and submits it as a separate bill without all those other trade-offs and checks and balances that were occurring in that larger bill. So we have concerns about that one as well. There are a number of bills, and this is more in the ambit of, outliers that talk about contested case hearings. There is one in particular that requires all our contested case hearings to be, the way it's written, it would require all our contested case hearings to be handled by hearings officers designated by the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and we would have to reimburse DCCA for that work. Obviously, I think this bill was aimed at a lot of agencies that don't regularly do contested case hearings, and our concern is that we were swept up in an attempt to handle a problem that doesn't exist for us. It would usurp the power of this commission to render decisions and or hold hearings and render decisions on contested case hearings. Hearings officers would be required to handle all contested case hearings and then report back to the commissioners. There is also a bill out there to change the allowable uses on agricultural lands so that solar facilities would no longer, under any circumstances, be allowed on B lands. There is also a bill with regard to Native Hawaiian rights training that's a little bit draconian, that we have concerns about, that would require commission members to complete the course within a certain amount of time. And if they don't, they can't serve or render decisions. That's a little bit problematic, given that we're not in control of when those classes are given, and we are all private citizens. If you can't make a class and then it's not given again for 6 months, it may cause significant quorum problems. That pretty much covers all the different categories of bills that there are out there. Oh, there is one other bill, SB 41, which is well intended, but I mean, it's not aimed at us, but it sweeps us up. That would require that land discretionary permits for housing developments, and the way I read it also, district boundary amendments would, or anything associated with the development permit, would have to be decided within 60 days or it's automatically approved. Obviously, this creates a lot of problems for us, especially since after a petition is deemed complete, we're usually giving the parties 30 to 60 days to file their position statements and all the rest. I mean, it's just not workable. So we'll be opposing that one as well. And I believe that covers just about everything, categories.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. So there's 6 sort of broad categories. There's, in no order of importance, LUC versus county level of jurisdiction over rezonings, bills that describe the kinds of activities allowed in the ag district, bills that cover how meetings are run, particularly during the pandemic, bills on the potential reorganization of state government that would affect the LUC, obviously the budget bill, and then bills that affect sort of contested case and other administrative and quasi-judicial procedures. There's so much to potentially talk about. I'm just going to throw open the floor and see if there's particular questions that commissioners have at this time. Commissioner Cabral.
Well, I'll start it off on conducting of the meetings. If we definitely want to be able to at least have that option to have Zoom meetings, and or I see, because I do hundreds of condominium subdivision meetings. Right now I'm in the middle of 100 of them. But I see the future as having that a combination of where you would have participants potentially on Zoom and live. So i.e., like Arnold's doing right now, he went to the location. If I wanted to, was in Honolulu and I wanted to go be there, I would have that ability, as the commissioner to be there. So I can see how we would try and work out some kind of combination like we did before, but have a big screen like we do there, and everybody can see who's there and who's participating. So I think that and as well as being able to be Zoom, because then we don't have to spend the state money to fly over and stay in hotels and all of that. So I see that combination. I think it's completely unworkable if you think that I'm gonna want to open my office or even let people know where I live or anything. Sorry, but I live in downtown Hilo, and I probably, if I opened this office to have people over my shoulder because they wanted to have, I could have right now, if I walked outside, I'd probably have at least 20 homeless people that could come right in and be all warm and fuzzy and out of the rain, etc. And so I think that it's completely dysfunctional to think that we have to have a space on that island for every meeting that people could attend. Instead, have a solution. We have state public libraries everywhere, and almost all the towns or some kind of setup has been, even in Nalehu, in small areas, they have some kind of a public library with a computer or two. Have it be posted that everybody can go to those sites, and if they don't have their own computer, and attend by Zoom at a public library setting or something. So I think that, use the facilities the state already has instead of imposing on creating new crazy ones. So I would, if you can, I don't know all the details, but I'm saying, who makes up this stuff? I mean, what are they smoking, But so I would say definitely use the libraries or something so the public can attend if they don't want to fly to Honolulu for the meeting or they don't have their own computer.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabral. Commissioner Ohigashi.
I just have a question about the removal of jurisdiction from the Land Use Commission up to 100 acres. Is there anything in the legislature that makes sure that there's a consistency of decisions statewide if that would, if they implement that, and
No, there is not. I mean, the 100-acre bills, and I've had discussions with the heads of the various departments of planning and permitting, although that's in flux right now because we've got a couple of new ones. But, not only is there a lack of consistency required in the bill, but I'm not sure that, well, the planning directors understand what they're getting into if this happens, because it's my personal opinion that the Supreme Court hasn't meddled with the sub-15-acre decisions because there hasn't been a lot of lawsuits over them. Once you're talking about 100 acres, I think that the counties are going to find themselves in a position where they're going to have to do exactly what we do, and that is hold contested case hearings for every decision that they render. And the planning directors are actually a little wary of this bill because they're afraid that they're going to end up having to handle the public trust doctrine issues that they don't have to handle right now because we handle it for them. Although it would seem that the mayors, for instance, are in support of this bill, the heads of the Department of Planning and Permitting are not, because it's scary. And that is one of the problems, is that the inconsistencies with regard to the decision-making would become to the forefront. One of the other problems that we see is that the counties are notorious for ignoring the state's issues. And the things that come to us from OP that need to be handled with regard to infrastructure that would, be costly to the state if the developers weren't going to have to build it, they would probably not get, put into any conditions on the bills, on the decisions and orders. and issues that the Land Use Commission would raise and the Office of Planning would raise with regard to impacts on the needs of land for food sustainability, climate change, and the rest probably wouldn't get adhered to either.
What is the development's community feeling or input into the bill regarding this matter? Because there's a sense of, at least there is a sense of knowing what to do if you're a developer at the present time.
Yeah,
And there's no, the lack of consistency would create some problems for developers. So I'm just curious as to whether or not they have.
that's exactly right. There's a lot of misrepresentation as to what would occur with this bill. Some of the less Akamai developers, shall we say, are convinced that if the county handles things, then there wouldn't be a lot of appeals. I mean, you know, that's one of the reasons that some developers are in support of this bill. There is a feeling on the part of, not a feeling, but I mean, Nancy has put it very succinctly in a couple of conversations. You know, the county councils are more, shall we, to be circumspect about it, are much more easily influenced than the Land Use Commission. And, you know, the county councils are, you know, they're political. There's all sorts of things that they need and want from developers as politicians, or that developers can give them. The development community feels that or some of the development community feels that control will allow them to move projects forward in the face of community opposition.
And the last question I have is, does this bill grant to any specific authority within the county structure? In other words, does this bill require the planning commissions to follow it, to implement it, or does it require the council, or does it leave it free? Because once you get the council involved, wouldn't that be more like a legislative act rather than a quasi-judicial act?
That's exactly part of the problem. The bill leaves it to the decision-making authority at the county. So that's a big part of the problem. I should point out that our understanding is that it's not the developers that are pushing this bill, that it's the realtors.
Okay. Further questions, commissioners? Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, what I'm going to say about, in answer to the question, what did the development community think? It's not based on any scientific study or anything like that. But what I tried to do, since frankly, I'm not really a planner, when I got on the commission, is I tried to talk to a whole bunch of people because I knew, and I'm being very frank about it, I was being appointed not because I really knew anything specific about land use planning. Now, whether or not this perception is true or not, it seems a perception that you have these additional layers of government, it makes the process inefficient. So I think if the process is inefficient in some ways, then, you know, the inefficiency should be addressed. If the perception is wrong about the inefficiency existing in the process, then the perception should be addressed. You know, the state spent good money sending me and all of us, you know, to various national planning conferences. I think one of the things which really is not addressed in any of these bills, but can be considered, is one of the cities in the Bay Area basically created a concierge kind of position where this one government official would be the concierge to basically help shepherd developments through whatever regulatory processes are there. You know, it's a sad commentary that many of our private clients feel like they have to hire, you know, consultants called expediters to get their projects through county planning departments or county building departments. So I think, you know, just the fact that things are just left to the counties doesn't necessarily take away the inefficiencies. But yeah, you know, to the extent a bill is designed to remove inefficiencies of multiple types of approvals where you're really resubmitting the same old things, then, you know, that should be looked at. But, you know, otherwise, I see what Dan is saying. I can't, Chair, if I could say one more thing about having, you know, hearings or a meeting place for the public. I think Zoom technology is really good, but it's really important to have actual physical location where people can come and voice their views. And I agree, it could be the public library, it could be whatever alternate site is. And even though there is a concern that things might get out of control, I would urge everyone to kind of err on the side of actually expanding participation. If there ever was a hearing that would have led to, you know, a real contentious type of things getting out of control, it was the Mauna Kea hearing. And in the end, I think probably some people would agree with my assessment. The vote of the Land Use Commission was frankly contrary to the vast majority of the people who were in the meeting room at the Nine Loa Hotel, and was not consistent with what they wanted. But the feeling I got in the end with the people who we basically did not agree with, they were the ones coming up to us, shaking our hands and saying, thank you very much for coming out to the community. Thank you for listening to us. You know, yeah, you didn't vote in our favor, but we understand what your position is. We might not agree, but thank you for coming out. I think, you know, one of our jobs is basically to restore trust of the people in government. And trust in government is not going to be helped if everybody is remote. It's really, really important, not only for the Land Use Commission, but for all other boards and commissions to actually go out, at least have some people out at the community level to make it clear that, you know, we're showing by action, we really want to listen to you and we're here. Aside from the fact that just some people can't use technology. So that's my comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
May I?
Commissioner Kuda. Mr. Ordenker.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with Cheryl Kuda. It's our experience that there is a tremendous amount of value in holding hearings. I actually think that this virtual meeting system is working and it's convenient. But in terms of public trust, I mean, the trust, not the public trust doctrine, but the public trusting us and rendering our decisions, that there is tremendous value in this commission actually traveling to the communities in which the issues are being raised and being present and having the community be able to come and see and watch in person exactly what is happening. I don't think that virtual technology gives the community the same level of comfort that they're being listened to and that the issues are being well aired and discussed as it does when in a public meeting in person, as opposed to a virtual meeting. So I would agree with Commissioner Okuda. The difficulty that we're facing right now is that, and I didn't mention this, but the governor's budget right now proposes that next year, or the coming fiscal year, that our travel budget, which is most of our non-personnel budget, be cut by 50%, and then in the following year be cut by 100%. Assuming that is what we end up with, we won't have any choice but to hold meetings virtually. And we won't have it, and in the second year of the biennium, any Chapter 91 or Chapter 92 requirements that would have us needing to travel, even staff, to a neighbor island would be impossible for us to handle because our budget will be gone for that. So,
Thanks, Dan. Commissioner Giovanni.
I concur with the comments of Commissioner Okuda, and as expanded by Mr. Orendanker, I see real value in especially our more controversial contested cases. I think if looking back over the last year, I go back to the Mauna Kea case that Commissioner Okuda referenced, and that had incredible community engagement, and it was very appropriate and important for us to be able to interact and be before the public, build that public trust. I look back over the numerous Zoom meetings we've had. We've not had an outpouring of the community really showing up in numbers like that. I'm a little concerned about the forthcoming meeting in March on Kauai. There's a tremendous amount of community interest in that case, and it's a Zoom meeting. I think it'll be a real test for us, eye-opening. I wish that we could have it in some of that meeting in person, but it's just not going to be possible. But going forward, I think that we should strive for some meetings in person, especially on the neighbor islands, for the cases that are, for which there is a large number of community members that are interested, have expressed interest in those cases.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioners, Commissioner Wong, followed by Commissioner Chang.
Chair.
The raise your hand function is harder in your room.
So Chair, I guess what happens is we're in a quandary right now, especially for the Land Use Commission and the state as well, because we have the COVID issue, we have the budget issue. Now, the budget is driving everything for the state of Hawaii in terms of travel and reorganization and all that. And our hands are pretty much tied and on that issue, right? If I hear it correctly. I agree with Commissioner Okuda that, and also Commissioner Giovanni, that we should be out in the different islands, if possible, because of our connections with them. But right now it's hard because of the travel restrictions and the budget. And I just wanted to state for the record that, it's going to be hard for us to figure out even next year, because the biennium budget is zero in travel, what we're going to do. But we should try and figure out something. I like Commissioner Cabral's statement for allowing people to use the library. I mean, I didn't even think about that. So Commissioner Cabral had a great idea on that issue, that we don't invite them to our house, but let's say for Oahu, we may have to use this conference room we're at for Oahu people to come. I mean, as long as it's less than so much people because of the COVID. I mean, that's all I'm saying. There's a lot of larger issues that we have to think about besides our own little issue, how it's going to affect everything else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang, followed by Commissioner Cabral.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that we are, it's a question of balance. What do we need versus what may be the best? I will tell you, I have found that these virtual meetings has opened up participation to a much broader group, because people don't physically have to be at the location. They don't have to travel. So to that extent, I have welcomed the virtual platform as a way of engaging the community. And whether they participate or not, there's an understanding of our process and they see how we conduct it. So I see great value. I also think that's the reality of the future. Even if we address COVID and the pandemic, there will continue to be, whether it's the budget shortfall, but I think that there will be a, this virtual platform has created an ability to reach a larger constituency. I do agree that there is value to having in-person representation or an opportunity to see it. My suggestion would be when we have a matter involving that particular island, that's where there would be the island representative. We'd find a public facility, whether it's a library, but that would be the place where we would open it up to the public. And you'd have that island representative being there, but we would not have to have one on each island. But it was so that we could satisfy at least the constitutional mandate to be at the location where the land is located. But I think that way addresses where we don't all have to travel. I will tell you, this has been a luxury for me that normally when we have LUC meetings, I mean, we're leaving our houses at 5 o'clock in the morning and we don't get home till 7 at night. Now we're able to do other work, right? I mean, so part of it is, and as I think we've all mentioned, I mean, this is a voluntary board, but we are all giving up a considerable amount of time to do the travel. So one, to accommodate the community, I think it would be appropriate to have the island representative and a public facility where the public on that island can attend in addition to the virtual platform. But I see great value in continuing the Zoom or some kind of virtual meeting. I mean, I was last night we had a town hall meeting for Kaneohe. We had over 120 people on the Zoom. And the legislator said, normally they get about 24 people. So again, I think if we're looking at public participation, this is the wave of the future, or at least a portion of it, where I think people are getting used to, but it also ensures some safety, but again, greater public participation. So I think we can come up with some kind of a hybrid. And if there is we anticipate it's going to be a very controversial meeting, I'm certain we can make some kind of a travel adjustments where maybe more of us can travel. But I think at a minimum, the island representative, when a matter is on that island, we provide a facility on that island. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Cabral, followed by Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everybody. The in-person meetings are wonderful, especially when it's controversial, but so many of ours aren't. And then again, if we did a hybrid, but with no travel money, there's going to be limited options. And then the other thing is, rather than like on Oahu, your office there, or the conference room, I'm assuming that's the conference room down the hall from the LUC office, is, nice and convenient. But I would really, really recommend that we try and find, like in Oahu, the airport as your meeting room, that on the top floor there, because at any place you can be that you take that public away from your own office, there's plenty of parking there, there's security, somebody else's security, there's somebody else is cleaning the place constantly, because, even after COVID's going to be a long time. And then even after that, I think people are so if you're going to have hybrid type meetings, I would say use public facilities outside of, the normal ones, even not the hotels, but so I think Don's talking about sort of like we did on this when we've had them, and I would go down in the basement of the state building. So I would be there, and if people did show up, and that was okay and stuff. But I think hybrids, and I think Zoom is never going to go away, but it's all about the money right now. There's no money. So they've got to figure out how to do it. And I think the legislators are err on the side of, if you worry about the minority of people who do not have access to a computer, the minority of people, it's like if they wanted to come to an LUC meeting and they don't drive, are we supposed to go to, send a driver for them? There are those people. You cannot cater the whole world to that minuscule number of people who can't do something. So people are finding their way to Zoom. Unbelievable. I manage all these condominium and subdivisions with all these senior citizens. And it's amazing how many of them find their way to the Zoom meeting when they want to. So I think that there's the ability of our citizens to figure it out. And if you have a constant place, so if they really don't have a computer, which a few don't, but so many more do. I mean, so I think we just got to come up with what we're going to support. And of course, Dan going to the legislator, he's got to have some other agencies. And I feel like our LUC meetings and our staff are much more advanced on how to figure out how to have these meetings than many of these other state agencies. I mean, some of these state agencies, I think everybody just went home. They pick up their paycheck and that's the only duty they do. I'm sorry, not all of them, but there's appears to be quite a few agencies that have no other duty that they're doing that. So I mean, it's a balance, but with no money, we have no option. And in every year it can change. Why, it needs to, the law needs to be written to where it can be flexible. It cannot be you must or you must, because then every year it has to change. So that's my 2 cents. Again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yeah, first of all, I agree, like Gary, I wasn't chosen for my vast land use expertise. Like Gary, we're just chosen for our good looks, I guess. But I find that the in-house, the group meeting is an important factor. I point back to the one we had about AMD's Lahaina project. I don't think that there would be such a settlement and community buy-in without that initial first meeting. And and I understand the dollars and cents wise, but that's the trade-off we're making. And I think we lose that kind of opportunity. The second thing is that I'm fine with random talk about what we're the concerns we have, but I'm a little kind of worried about how are we going to go utilizing the existing legislators, whatever protocols they have. How are we going to go without a committee or without some of us being appointed to a legislative committee or do the necessary lobbying. So if Dan can explain to us what options, what the procedure will be, and that way we can at least maybe agree to positions or some or
Mr. Ordanker.
What do you do?
The question is essentially, we had the permitted interaction group as a way of making sure that the staff who were tracking bills and have to often turn on a dime to develop and write a position have a way of keeping in touch with the commission on its policy desires. What do we do?
Without having the pig, there's no way that this commission can react quickly enough to handle changing issues at the legislature. The only way that I can foresee handling this is that I will, first of all, under the OIP's guidance, 2 of you can talk at any time, as long as you're not talking about deliberating towards a decision on a substantive matter. So you're free to talk to each other about your concerns with regard to any legislation that's out there. The only way that I can perceive of handling this is that I'm simply going to have to call various commissioners on the day that we get information on a bill. Sometimes that may be only a few hours before a hearing is scheduled to discuss the matter. That's one by one. That's the only way that I can foresee doing this.
You have a follow-up, Commissioner Ohigashi?
I just think that that's a good idea, but that's the way it looks like it's going to have to be. But if there is some issues that you want to explore, is it permissible for you to email all of us and say that this issue came up with regard to such and such legislation and then
Yeah, it's permissible.
I want to recognize our Deputy Attorney General, Ms. Chena.
I think, you're still going to have a sunshine issue, and you can still create a permitted interaction group as regards to certain bills or certain issues that you want to have, represented by you to the legislature. I mean, it's just that at today's meeting, it was not properly recognized as, the sunshine agenda issue was not proper. You can still, at your next meeting, create your permitted interaction group to go forward in this legislative session. We've never said that you can't do that.
I want to point out to the Deputy General that is a completely unworkable situation. By the time, in order to notice this meeting, we had to send out the notice a week ago. Most of these bills were not even posted until 2 days ago, and we already have hearings scheduled on them. It is impossible to work under those circumstances in the manner in which the Attorney General is suggesting. That is why we're left with the staff having to contact the commissioners individually when these matters arise. There is no way that we can schedule a meeting under the Sunshine Law in time to notice and handle these individual bills as they come up.
Mr. Orendenker, I am not the bad guy. If this is an opinion of the OIP, this is what they've been telling us about how to handle this. If something is super urgent and you can't do it, and you can't create your permitted interaction group to handle a certain bill for the rest of the legislative session, because that's what we have been advising. You can do it, that you can, now you know what the bills are. And now you can actually create your permitted interaction group to handle these bills for the rest of the session. It's not that we've told you that you need to create a permitted interaction group every time you have a notice of the bill. Now you know what the bills are, and you can create these permitted interaction groups. And in the alternative, you can have an emergency meeting. That's what OIP has said.
Ms. Chena, if I may, I don't think anybody was suggesting you were the bad guy or woman. Though I appreciate the tone of frustration that might have come across. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Okuda, followed by Commissioner Axon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this is just me personally. I have no lack of confidence. In fact, I have a lot of confidence that as these matters come up, that the executive director and the staff and you, Mr. Chair, and whoever else you might want to consult with, consistent with the requirements of the Sunshine Law, how you want to handle these things on a specific case, I really don't have a problem with that. Mainly because if I had a problem with something like that, we could bring a motion to remove you as chair, or make a nasty statement to the executive director. I think we all strive to comply with the Sunshine Law, and that's good for the community. Hey, whatever we do, it should be out in the open. But as far as these procedural things where there's been, and I know there's been consultation on procedural things, I have not ever seen you or the executive director or anybody else do things which have been contrary to what people on the commission have thought, even informally, or that anything was being done in a nefarious way or playing office politics. And by the way, I've seen office politics in government, so I think I can recognize that. So, I think the Deputy Attorney General, her position, I think she accurately states the law. Following the Sunshine Law is not only the law, but it's important for us to keep trust in government. But I have a lot of confidence based on seeing the actions previously taken, that when these issues come up very quickly at the legislature, you and the executive director, with consultation of staff, and to the extent you believe you need to consult with other commission members, consistent with the Sunshine Law, I think we're actually okay. Yeah, and so I'm not, to the executive director, I'm not saying we should lose, we shouldn't be concerned or focus on these things, and it's very good we focus on it, but it's really not a situation right now that I plan to lose any sleep over. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Axon.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm late joining you this morning. I just finished a conference from early this morning. It's an international conference. We finished at 9, and I was able to join you 2 minutes after. So, the reason why I'm saying this is this conference is international. We have over 800 people participating, entire United States, also in Canada. And we were able to talk to somebody from Toronto or somebody in New York or even California, one-on-one, or, so this technology has a lot to offer for everyone, not only for individuals, but also state government agencies. So this technology, Zoom or other platform, are here to stay. So the sooner we can be acclimated or learn these technologies, the better for us moving forward. In-person meetings or in-person, one-on-one is very important. I give you that. But sometimes we cannot get everything we want. Commissioner Wong's saying, even when people ask me, how is work, how is construction, it all depends on money. It depends, our trade, our employment is based on economy. Money not coming in, there's no work. So same thing with the government, the budget. If there's no budget, we need to adapt to that. So, and going back to the in-person meeting, it should be, I believe, a case-by-case basis. I would defer to the chair or the staff itself on, to choose what meetings, should be in person. Like the, controversial Mauna Kea or whatever, that, really the community would benefit on in-person meeting. So, they have the staff or the chair, even some of the commissioner has a better feeling, especially their, home counties on those important issues. And by the way, if you notice, most of the time, these controversial issues, they have certain organizations that pushing, one way or another. And usually these organizations or group tends to organize themselves. I've been to a meeting that, certain groups coordinated, organized themselves. They rented a room, and participated as a group. So there's other ways that, can be done, there's other ways that we can get everything too. So, but, again, going back to the budget, sometimes we cannot get. So the sooner we plan on those, the better for us. I believe, there's got to be some kind of policy, some kind of a strategy on moving forward on, how to deal with these meetings. So again, everything is based on economy, based on money. We're just gonna have to deal what we are given. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Axon. And thank you all commissioners for this robust discussion. I have a few thoughts and a couple of questions. Commissioner Wong, you're raising both hands.
Chair, sorry, going back to AG and our executive director's conversation.
Colloquy, as one of the legal representatives before us would say.
I'm just, sorry, I gotta use the term. I'm just a local boy. Don't say anything, Lee. Anyway, I just want to know, so where do we go from here, especially on legislative stuff? That's because we have timelines now that could be we have to turn around in 24 hours, maybe 8 hours. Where do we go from here? For certain, we have to turn in our system.
Yeah, I had a couple specific follow-ups regarding that. Can I articulate those, Commissioner Wong, and to our Deputy Attorney General, in the hopes of trying to get to where we're going. One question I had, Ms. Chena, is that given the legislature's ability to do gut and replace, even like this week's list of bills is not next week's list of bills, much less the list of bills that's going to necessarily carry us through the rest of the legislative session. So I understand what you're saying about the interpretation, your interpretation of the Sunshine Law, but how do we deal with that practicality of how the legislature actually operates?
Okay. What you can do is you separated it into certain categories, right? You had 4 categories like policy,
which I expanded to 6. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You had a bunch of categories. Okay. With those categories, you can create permitted interaction groups just on those categories, saying, with regards to certain categories or all the categories, we're going to create one permitted interaction group or 6 permitted interaction groups to address these. And at your meeting, you can discuss, what in general your policy is towards these categories, and these permitted interaction groups could actually address, be on the pivot when these legislations or bills, when the new ones pop up, or when there's gut and replace, because they're on the permitted interaction group for these specific categories. And I think that would work, and you could create these groups as soon as your next meeting. I don't really think, that it would hamper or hinder you in any way. And what happened was, before this meeting, we did send staff, it came out from the OIP, and it was Sunshine Law options to address state legislative issues and measures. And I think staff could forward it to all of the commissioners, and it gives you options on how to address this on a quicker take, because I think even OIP acknowledges that that it's you need to act fast.
Thank you, Ms. Chena. there might be a specific question or follow-up from Commissioner Wong or Mr. Ordanker regarding that response that would help our conversation.
Yeah, Chair. So the question is, can we create the pig today for these six areas?
Sorry, no, it wasn't agendized as such.
Okay.
So the question I have is, we have hearings now. What can we do until we create the pig?
You know, I think you can give your opinions here as to, you know, what you think should be done in, as far as the 6 categories, but I don't think you can create the pig today.
Yeah, so I understand. Let's say we have to testify tomorrow on a certain bill that will affect the Land Use Commission in general, saying they want to do away with the Land Use Commission. How are we going to testify to say we don't want to do away with the Land Use Commission?
I mean, I think you have 2 options. I think today, as it is, you could have, you know, staff would definitely be testifying against it, and you as individuals could be testifying against it too. I mean, it's sorry to say that, you know, I mean, we were not asked for our advice prior to this, and I understand that you did it differently before, and you know, we might not have, you know, as a group, not have been, you know, advised that there is this memo from OIP advising about the Sunshine Law and legislative measures.
I just want to assure Ms. Chena assure you that we did so on the advice of our previously assigned Deputy Attorney General.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, we're just trying to give you, you know, the best advice that we can, and we're trying to get this done.
So it does sound like we have a commitment a productive commitment to work together to, first of all, agendize the next matter in a manner in which we can set up these topically based 1 or more pigs. We do have the most immediate issue of any bills that come between now and the next session, next time we meet, which we don't even know all the ones that might be heard. Commissioner Wong?
So, Chair, there's 2 issues. The first issue is, I just want to ensure that, you know, when we did agendize this today's hearing, everyone was noticed. So even Brian Yee was noticed. So, I mean, it's good to see him, but I mean, I would assume that everyone would do their homework once the agenda came out. So, you know, I would assume that if there was issues that arise, that our staff would be notified, or they would be called and say, hey, I have this issue. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, for our AG, can we make a motion now to say, on behalf of the Land Use Commission, can the chair and the staff work together on any of the hearings that may occur until we create a pig, and, you know, do our statement for that fact?
Yes, you can do that, you know, until, okay, yes, you can.
Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you, Chair. In response to Commissioner Wong, whether the motion is made and carried, I think the chair and the executive director already have that authority. And but yeah, I mean, I'd be supportive of it. But even if there wasn't a motion, I think the chair and the executive director have the authority. And I kind of would expect that even if we didn't raise the issue, the chair and the executive director exercising their duties and obligations would be doing so anyway. Thank you.
If I may, at this time, an hour and 20 minutes into our brief meeting, there's a few things I want to say, observations on this overall discussion. And if with the commission indulge me to do those in hopes of sort of summarizing where we're at and how to go forward. I will continue to work closely with the staff as legislative issues come up. I promised I was going to share with you that I was approached by House Finance Chair Luke to speak about, well, initially I got a call from the staff of Representative Luke because in response to a opinion piece I wrote on a personal capacity for Civil Beat that was published in December. And so her staff indicated that Chair Luke wanted to discuss that with me, to which I was surprised and slightly nervous, but she actually expressed her appreciation for the article that I had written. And then she also shared with me that she is looking in response to the state's budgetary situation, wanted to know a general orientation that we might have towards looking at reorganization of the Land Use Commission in its position in relationship to other land use regulatory agencies. I only expressed my personal opinion. I didn't speak on behalf of the commission, but I thought that really, given the state's budget situation, it's incumbent for all of us to say, yeah, we're willing to discuss new ways of doing business, new ways of organizing that are thoughtful, logical approaches to how we can do our business effectively and fulfill our duties. And so that was how those discussions with her and then Representative Tarnas began. So I want to share that with everybody. I have a few other observations. One, to go to, I guess, the discussion of and the interaction with Ms. Chena and our Deputy's Attorney General. I would actually like to agendize for a future Land Use Commission meeting really the subject of our representation by the Attorney General's office. We have been, I think, with the transition from one division of the Attorney General's office to another, and with the practice in this particular division of the Attorney General's office to rotate attorneys general rather than keep one attorney general assigned to us, it's presented certain different operational challenges to our things. And I'd like the ability for us to agendize that discussion so that we can talk about it in a sunshine compatible way. So Mr. Ordenker, I'm going to ask you to help develop, working with the Attorney General, of course, on putting that on a future agenda. Regarding the long and really thoughtful observations about whether we hold in-person meetings or remote meetings or hybrids, one thing I'll say is, like, not to be Debbie Downer or Donald Downer, COVID might be a 3 to 5 year thing rather than a 12-month thing or an 18-month thing. So we might be overly optimistic to be looking to the time when we can choose voluntarily between being in person and being remote. I think that the legislature, I think it's good that there's at least a vehicle out there from the Office of Information Planning or practices to address remote meetings, but I think they might be premature in thinking that they know what the world is going to look like in 6 months to a year. Ms. Chena, you would like to say something at this point or later?
Yeah, just a quick statement that I just would like to say that in addition to the LUC, my division also represents a lot of other boards and commissions, and all of the boards and commissions, including the Board of Land and Natural Resources and the Commission on Water Resource Management, have rotating deputy AGs. And I don't think that we've had a problem with how we advise these boards and commissions. I think you guys can agendize this for a future meeting to discuss. It has been raised with our higher ups, and the decision has been made to provide you with a rotating agenda of deputy AGs.
Thank you, Ms. Chena. Commissioner Ohigashi.
No, I just wanted to make a comment on the restructuring of the. I wasn't going to actually finish.
Okay. I was going to agree with you. I was moving on to like the pandemic's ongoing. I don't know that we're going to get to in-person meetings. I do agree that there's value in being in person. I do think the meeting you referred to around Pulelehua and the Maui Land and Pine project came out differently because of people looking us in our eyes, and being alo to alo, and having the chance to talk to their decision makers. And I think the last point, which was more humorous than anything, regarding Commissioner Cabral's statement that almost everybody is online. Yes, perhaps, but it reminds me of the Rap Rapplinger skit where he asks, "Is everybody who's not here? Let me know." You know, so we don't necessarily know who's not here to say that they're not here. Commissioner Ohigashi.
I forgot about this, the restructuring issue, but what I'm concerned about is that the Office of Planning, or the restructured Office of Planning, would become some kind of super agency that would more than likely interfere with the independence of the Land Use Commission's decisions. And I point out to experience that I have on some county boards and commissions where they're governed by an executive director of that particular area. And I think that the problem exists is that the commission becomes too dependent and too responsible to the point of view of the director of any kind of division, if it's placed under it. That's just my concern with the restructuring, that we will be actually losing a lot of independence, or becoming the proverbial rubber stamp that everybody accuses us of being anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Appreciate that. And I believe, Mr. Ordenker, the tone of the LUC's draft comments on potential hearings for this legislation, correct me if I'm wrong, are to raise issues like that, and recognizing it's the legislature's sort of prerogative to reorganize government, but raise issues around what legal, procedural, and other implications there would have for our fulfilling our business. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So the spirit of Commissioner Ohigashi's comments can be certainly captured within.
Yes.
We would want to maintain our independence. Commissioner Okuda.
And Mr. Chair, just very briefly, regarding future legislation, can I also ask, it's not urge, just ask that maybe we also, you and the executive director, keep your eye out on things which might be outside of the Land Use Commission silo. I just want to throw something out there, that we're going to be in years of limited budget, limited resources. And the question is, how do we move the state into the future, 40, 50 years from now? How do we make sure that represented or unserved people are protected? And if you agree, I would ask that you see if a movement can be made to fund public classroom teaching 100%. If there's going to be cuts, let's not cut classroom public teaching, especially in areas where we've got underserved or what some people described as marginalized people. This pandemic is showing that people who got money can get their kids educated, and other people are being left behind. I think we need in this community to make a statement supporting public classroom education. I'm not talking about high bureaucrats that at certain departments that sometimes appear in front of the commission, and we get all appalled that you're getting paid so much money and you can't answer our question. Okay, I'm not talking about protecting their jobs, their pay scale. What I'm asking is if you can just maybe kokua a little bit, public classroom education. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Your reference to the budget made me Thank you for your comment, and your reference to the budget made me also just want to acknowledge, while acknowledging the comments from Commissioners Cabral, Axon, and Wong, that indeed we are in a state budget and our ability to travel or not is going to be restricted. I just want to remind everybody that our total budget, I think, is $500,000 a year. The state's $1.4 billion shortfall is not going to be saved or lost or won based on an elimination of the LUC's travel budget. And so I won't have a problem if this commission feels that we really need to have some flexibility and the ability, when safe, to meet in person. I don't have a problem advocating for the small amount of necessary funds we need for that travel. So, commissioners, are there further comments or questions on the agenda item that is before us regarding legislative issues? Or Mr. Oerdinker, within this item, any further clarification you would like to have from the full commission on pending matters?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not at this time. I would point out to the commissioners that the commissioners are always welcome to participate in the legislative process as individuals and as commissioners, and that the legislature puts a lot of weight on commissioners' testimony with regard to various issues. So that if something is occurring and we can't respond in the manner that you would like as quickly as possible, you are welcome to submit testimony. We will try and keep the commissioners apprised of what is happening. One question that was asked that I never got a chance to answer was, can I email everyone? And the answer to that is, yes, I can email all of the commissioners with what is happening. The problem is that the commissioners can't
respond
to everybody. They can respond to me as individuals, but I would caution the commissioners once again on pressing that reply all button, because that is a problem. But I will be sending out emails with what's happening if there's anything significant.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang.
Thank you. Sorry. This is thank you, Mr. Oerdinker. And follow up to your comment, that would be really helpful if we as the commissioners could receive perhaps, I don't know if you can do like a spreadsheet of the relevant bills and its status. I don't intend to make more work for you, but that way you can put the commissioners on alert as to critical legislation that individual commissioners may want to provide testimony for. But because I don't check the status of legislative bills. But if your office could prepare some kind of form for us at the beginning, and then you just have a column on its status so that you don't have to do more work as the session goes on. But that might be helpful, at least for me it would be.
Commissioner Chang, we can do that easily.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
Just wanted to know if from our Attorney General, I'm pointing to the box, from the Attorney General or Deputy, whether or not what the contents or what the limitation in the contents of any such email should be, whether or not the solicitation from the, because I just want to be clear as to what kind of contents are not allowed in any kind of email, last email. That would be the best.
Emails are tricky. It really should not be, really can't be like, for example, you know how you're playing telephone, you email Mr. Oerdinker and he emails back to somebody else and with information, or you email a couple of other commissioners. So I guess he can, give you a status, but it's more properly, it would really be more proper if we do things at commission meetings.
So we cannot email.
Yeah, you really shouldn't be emailing.
So the director cannot tell us the status by email.
I guess you can send out an email sending, giving you the status between now and the next meeting, but it's, I mean, it's going to be difficult because all of you have to hold your tongues and not be responding, because it's going to be really easy to hit reply all.
I can assure the deputy we are a demure and quiet group.
I mean, it's just so tempting, right? When you see something and you're like, I have to reply. And
well, and one of the possible solutions to this is that Mr. Ordenker BCCs the commissioners, so that if you hit reply all, you simply reply to him. So, is there anything else, commissioners, at this time? There being no further business other than to delightfully harass and welcome back Mr. Yi to our company. Nice to have you back, Brian. Is there anything else, commissioners? If not, thank you very much for the thought. I was very encouraged by our discussion, particularly my fellow commissioners' deep commitment to engaging with the community on difficult issues, face-to-face when possible, as open as possible, making as many venues as avenues as possible for their interaction with us. I think Hawaii's just really, I mean, not to self-praise too much, but Hawaii's really well served by the spirit that you bring to your work. Thank you so much. With that, it's 10:37 and we're adjourned.